Sam Passmore, hello.
Hello, Lisa Jarman. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've got a bit of a cough, but I'm all good, in good spirits.
Oh, don't worry. If you start coughing, I'll join in because I've got one this side too, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Here, congratulations are in order.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I've had some big news. So there was a recent staff job position being advertised as a researcher in Radio Wales, somewhere I've been for the last, well, about 18 months now. And quite a few of us went for it, and I was the lucky one. So I'm now a staff member researcher at BBC Radio Wales. So I'm I know, I'm over the moon. It hasn't quite sunk in yet. I officially started the contract Monday when we're recording this, and yeah, nothing's changed sort of work-wise. And I do the same job, but it just feels a little bit different. You know, it feels sort of, I don't know, I've got that security. I've got that sort of that milestone in my career. So there's lots of happy tears. So yeah, I'm over the moon. So yeah, thank you very much.
So I know when you were doing your apprenticeship, you left us a year ago, wasn't it? You left us. Am I right? You left us a year ago, and then you left the Beeb the following March, was it?
Yeah, I think it ended with you guys in September 23, and then it was the end of the apprenticeship with the additional 6 months at the BBC in March. Yeah, so almost a year ago now, or over a year ago.
Oh my god! And then you basically you got taken on by the BBC. You had work, didn't you, after your apprenticeship?
Yeah. So when the apprenticeship ended, well, just before it actually, in around January time, I had a chat with management, and they basically said, "We'd like to keep you on until June." June at least, as a freelancer. It was sort of, you know, freelance work, but it was guaranteed work, so I didn't have to worry about sort of chasing them for the next month. It was all set up. So it was kind of a hybrid of, you know, pay as you earn sort of freelance sort of work. But yeah, I've worked with them until June, and then June it went to July went to August, and then as the jobs were coming out then for this one, we were interviewed in September, and it was announced at the end of September that I got it. So I've not had a break from the BBC, which is very fortunate. I know some people have to go elsewhere, so I've been very lucky. Yeah. That's
fantastic news. I know what a lot of people out there who are listening to us will know how scarce staff jobs are these days, you know?
Yeah, it's thin on the ground, and you know, it's public knowledge that there's cutbacks at the moment with the BBC. They've got to save X amount of money to keep in budget. So there's actually voluntary redundancies being sort of suggested at the moment, just to see what they can work out budget wise. So for me to get a job when the climate's not looking great, it's I don't know how I've managed it.
Well, no, it's a ray of sunshine, really, because it gives people hope as well. You know what I mean? If you hear someone's good news, it passes it on to other people as well. That there is hope for people to get a longer term of job. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still good to have that cautiousness and sort of, you know, don't see it as it's going to happen for everyone, because it won't. But yeah, it's definitely a ray of light, and hopefully something that people can sort of cling on to and be like, no, there is jobs out there. You know, there's still loads of freelance work. You know, it's just staff jobs are next level. Unfortunately, they're sort of, it's the commitment of having someone on the books for the foreseeable, rather than sort of month by month. They can work out their sort of monthly budgets. You know.
Yeah, definitely. So with this new job, does that mean a move of living arrangements for you? Are you going to move to Cardiff, or?
So yeah, it's just happily coincided at the same time. I sort of said yes to the address. That's how I'm sort of phrasing it at the moment. Before I got the job, so I'm moving in with actually Dan Morgan, who's one of the cohorts apprentices after me. So me and Dan worked together in Radio Wales, and he had a room come free for the next 6 months. So I said yes. So I'll be moving to Cardiff from Swansea, because that's where I'm based, at the end of the month. So that commute, that hour in and hour back commute in the car, can disappear, and I'll have 2 hours of my life back every day, which is unreal. 10 hours a week of just, I don't know, I can just do other things and have a bit of a social life, you know.
Exactly. Do you know what? I know it doesn't seem far mile-wise, but the traffic and stuff these days is just getting ridiculous, isn't it? And traveling isn't just that 35, 40-minute commute. It's what comes with it, isn't it, really,
Absolutely. And just with like the working patterns starting at maybe 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., you're hitting rush hour, especially in places like the Port Talbot, sort of 50-mile-an-hour bit, both sort of going to and from work. You hit it, and it adds an extra 20 minutes every day. So I said an hour in, an hour back. It's actually an hour and 20 and an hour and 20 back. So yeah, it'd be good to wipe that. The state of my car will be very happy because I do feel sorry for her. She does a lot of mileage. But
what's her name?
Oh God, her name's Lady Macbeth, and I don't know why. It's because she's blue, and I thought blue, Scotland, Lady Macbeth for some reason.
I love it.
Yeah.
And my last car was called Ovlu because it was the registration number OV60LUW.
Nice.
And it's the only way I could remember it, so I just nicknamed her Ovlu. And I would you actually start talking about your cars like people, don't you?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it in work the other day. Like, I think only me and two other people in the office actually named their cars, and I was like, I can name you them all. I've got Sasha, I've got Tarquin, I've got Kaiser, and now I've got Lady Macbeth. All at separate times, not at the same time. I don't have 4 cars. I'm not a madman. But yeah, it is interesting.
So commuting to work now, will you be catching the train, or are you going to try Cardiff's public transport?
I haven't really thought about it. Dan, who I'll be living with, says that the train from Fairwater, where I'll be living, is fairly easy to get to Central Square, because that's where the BBC is. It's right in the centre. It's right opposite the train station. So that'll be pretty easy, but it depends on what shift I'm working.
Yeah.
Because I've been moved around quite a bit recently, doing different bits and bobs. So if I'm on a later shift, I might just drive in, because I can get staff car park. I don't mind the sort of 10-minute walk. It's sort of gets your steps in. So
yeah, that's true. I'm thinking if you're parking where I used to park, it's a nice 10-12-minute walk up and back and forward, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So talking about Radio Wales as a whole, are you going to be assigned to a certain program, or do you find yourself dipping into a lot of different programs? Is there any program that you haven't worked on at Radio Wales?
During daytime, so the daytime schedule, which is the Wyn Evans show, the phone in, and the afternoon show, are like the main ones that Radio Wales looked after. I've worked on all 3 of them. And for the foreseeable, well, for the next 2 months at least, I'm on the phone in, which is the sort of news reactive story program with Jason Mohammed, Oliver Hydes, and a few other presenters that sort of switch in and switch out. So I'll be on that for the next 2 months. But I literally had a phone call before this chat, asking if I can produce Friday next week on the afternoon show and Monday the week after. So it's very much because I've got that skill set now, where I've very fortunately been able to sort of produce here, there, and everywhere, as well as research on the shows.
Yes,
I've now can be that sort of utility man, that sort of team player, where when they need cover, they sort of ask me to act up, which is brilliant because I love producing. So to answer your question in a very long way, the phone in for now. But yeah, I'm happy to work wherever, because I just love the station. I think everything they do is brilliant.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think radio was a medium, because I worked at Radio Cymru for a while, and I went in as a researcher, but I was APing in telly at the time. But I'd never worked in radio, so in my day they didn't have APs, assistant producers, in the radio department.
Yeah.
Do they have them do they have them now?
Not as such.
No.
I guess the daily setup for the shows tend to be a producer, a broadcast assistant, a couple of researchers, and you'll have other producers then who are just sort of planning for the next day or planning for future, so there's no such thing as an assistant producer. I guess it's a term that may have sort of just dissolved a little bit. There's just producers, researchers, and broadcast assistants, and they just all interchange with each other. They all have their roles, and they'll muck in together. So it's sort of
because I was APing in television, and then went down to be, well, not went down, but went to become a researcher at Radio Wales, because there was no AP position at Radio Cymru, sorry. And then I'd been researching for about 2 months, and then I had the opportunity to act up as producer as well. And it's great, isn't it? It's such good experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just to so for example, the last month or so throughout September, I was producing The Late Show with Larry Shawn, Monday to Thursday, and then I was producing Friday Night with H, which I'm actually doing tonight as well. And just it's not just producing on those shows, it's sort of working the desk as well. It's sort of doing the faders, firing the tracks and stuff. And it just, you feel like a bedroom DJ. It's unreal, but you're actually going out to the nation, you know. So I loved it. You get to sort of put your own spin on things, add bits, sort of really up the production value if you want to, or keep it pretty basic if you think it's too much. It's lovely to have that sort of creative freedom. Obviously there's things that you can't do, but there's a lot of things that you can do, and I've loved producing. That's the goal. I'd love to go into produce. That's my next sort of goal anyway.
Yeah, I think, you know, where you are, being taught how to set up the desk and taking control, maybe with just you and a presenter, you're sort of halfway there really to that goal of producing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to have a month run acting up as a producer, even before I was a staff member, you know, that was when I was still a freelancer. It shows that they've got that sort of belief in me. They've invested the time and the training, and, you know, I learned a lot of it through the apprenticeship as well. It's great that I've got that in my back pocket now. So like I mentioned, you know, producing next week when I'm supposed to be just researching, it shows that there's that opportunity for me to act up, and there's that stepping stone to still sort of show, look, I'm here, I'm keen, I want to progress, because, you know, I want to show that I'm hungry, you know, I want to keep going up and up and up. So yeah.
That's fantastic, because, you know, I'm thinking about when you started, Sam. Obviously, you weren't at Radio Wales when you started your apprenticeship.
No, I was in BBC Sport Wales, so it was radio, but it was BBC Sport Radio, and it was a different vibe. You know, it was a great experience. I learned a lot from it, but I didn't have that creativity that I just mentioned. It was very much, so I was a production coordinator for the 6 months, and people love it. You know, if it's, you know, it's a job that people love and people want to go into, and that's great, but it just wasn't for me. So what I was doing as a production coordinator was booking your tech for football matches and rugby matches. So when the presenters go there, you know, working out if they need ISDNs, etc. And it was okay, and it was a lot of booking hotels and cars and stuff. It just felt like I was a bit of a glorified assistant. So I'd ask for opportunities to sort of go in studio and do a bit more audio, sort of audio editing, anything like that. And the sort of opportunities weren't there, and it's down to no one's fault at all. It was just at the time we were super busy because it was in the middle of the season. People were stretched, and, you know, after a while it did grow a bit frustrating, because when I started the apprenticeship I was 30, so I'm a bit older than some of the other people in my cohort, and I just felt like this was my last throw of the dice to sort of get into media, because it's something I've always loved. And when those opportunities weren't coming my way, and I was looking at the calendar, and I was like, I'm only here for 18 months, and then I was like, right, I'm only here for 13 months. I decided to sort of reach out and ask if I could move. So yeah, after sort of 5 months or so, I asked to move, and then on the 6th month, quite neatly, I moved over and had the 12-month run then towards the end of the apprenticeship to really bed into Radio Wales. Yeah,
that was a good move, isn't it?
Yeah, and, you know, the help that I had from you guys at Skill Cymru and people at BBC was phenomenal. Like, if having that support network really helped, because I was in a low place. Like, I'm not afraid to sort of say it, because it was a big commitment for me to sort of do the apprenticeship, because I'd been a butcher, I'd been a baker, hadn't been a candlestick maker yet. But I'd had, I think, about 10 jobs before I did this. But before those 10 jobs, I did go to university and I did film and TV. So I've always had that love for media in all forms, but especially radio. When I saw the job, well, the apprenticeship advertised, I was like, do you know what? If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I cast the dice, and when those months were whittling down, I was like, oh God, I've really got to sort of put my head above the parapet and just sort of say, look, I'm not happy, I need to move, because I'm usually the type of person that will just get my head down and just grin and bear it, you know. I think it's important that when you're on an apprenticeship with that time frame, 18 months at the start sounds long, but it quickly flies by. And if you don't make the most of it, you'll regret it. So I was so happy that I had you guys at Skill to sort of help me get what I wanted out of it.
I think as well, Sam, with you, you mentioned sort of your maturity in a way of doing different jobs before your apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of, with somebody that they're not just kicking up a fuss because they're just not happy with something. There's a real reason for it. And you knew, didn't you? You knew that I don't want to stay here forever. I've got to move on.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned I had 10 jobs, and although I was 30, that's quite a lot of jobs to have before you're 30. So I've always been one that if I don't feel as if I fit in, not in sort of an exclusion way, just if it doesn't work for me, then I need to move on. And I kind of had that feeling with sports. And the people there were lovely. I'm not going to say a bad word about them because there isn't one to say, but just the work wasn't for me. And I decided that I'm going to have to speak up, but I don't want to give up on the apprenticeship because you don't have to do that. There's so many sort of avenues that you can go down. You spoke to Fionn a couple of months ago, and she sort of moved from radio into TV, and she had a great experience in sort of bargain hunts. So there's loads of avenues that you can go into. You don't have to stay rooted, and you don't have to quit. There's a middle ground where you can sort of venture out. You can go side to side and move across departments. You could go to anywhere you want.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is one thing that we always get with new apprentices. I was just telling you that we got a new cohort started this week. And when we have crew apprentices as well, a lot of them don't realise how many jobs are in radio and in TV and in film,
Yeah, absolutely. Like in radio alone, there's so much that you can move into. So to broaden that out to TV as well, this... God, TV is another beast that I've never touched. Unfortunately, I've not sort of I haven't been tempted to tame that beast yet, but maybe in the future.
You've got plenty of time as well,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always been my mission to get into radio first, learn the sort of the reactive side of radio because it's much quicker than TV from what I've gathered. And then once I've sort of honed those skills, then branching out into TV a bit will eventually be the goal anyway.
Yeah, definitely, because I did it the wrong way around. I did telly then radio. And they say you should do radio then telly.
Okay.
So you'd have like weeks of pre-production time to organize guests and set up filming. But with radio, you get in that morning or whenever the program was going out, right, we need to find somebody that knows about beekeeping in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, the show that I'm working on now, the phone in that is exactly it. So you get in at 8:30. You have a morning meeting at 9 where you pitch all the stories that we've sort of seen on the news that morning, and then once we've picked our 3 stories, we've got from about 9:30 till midday to fix about 5 guests. And then and not everyone picks up their phone, not everyone wants to come on the radio because they're a bit shy. So it's frantic, it zaps you of energy that day, but once you come at the end of the show at 2:00, you're like, that was a good show and we did so much today, we've achieved loads. And you build those skill sets up then of how to work quickly under pressure, and that's just a transferable skill that will take you far, I think.
Definitely. And all those contacts you make,
Yeah, like my phone is full of contacts, people that I never thought I'd have in my phone, which is just ridiculous. Like I've got comedians. I'm a big fan of comedy, and I've just got comedians' numbers in my phone now, and it's like, that's mad. Like it's just crazy. It's
brilliant. And sometimes you get in and your anxiety's a little bit up, and it's like, oh my God, I've got to find this guest by blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the way I used to deal with it, I used to think by the end of today, when I go drive home, I will have found somebody that's can talk about bees. Yeah. And they will have been on the show and they'll be in my contact number. And that's the way I sort of dealt with it, because sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about using that nervous energy, that anxiety in the right way, not burying your head and not sort of saying, oh, I can't do this. Just going frantic, using that crazy energy that you get from sort of almost the panic that it ensues in you, and just calling everyone. And people don't mind answering their phone. If they don't want to pick up the phone, they won't pick it up, and that's fine. You move on to the next one. But just keep calling, keep reaching out on email and stuff like that. And there's so many avenues you can go down. To use your example with beekeeping, there's so many Welsh beekeepers that you go down. You go down cafes and stuff like that. They use honey. So yeah, there's loads of tricks, and as long as you're using that time wisely and being sort of proactive, then it'd be great.
You heard about the apprenticeship, Sam.
Yeah.
You'd obviously been used to earning, good money, and maybe sort of a security within a job.
Yeah.
What made you think, oh, do you know what? This isn't for me. I am going to apply for this apprenticeship. I might have to come down wages wise, but it's going to be worth it if I get a place. What made you sort of think it's now or never, I suppose?
Yeah, so I had just finished 3 years at the insurance company Admiral.
Right.
And once you get to 3 years, or when I was working there anyway, you could cash your shares, because you get shares each year. So I could cash those shares at 3 years. They get taxed heavily, but it's a lump sum that you get. And I sort of worked towards those 3 years. As soon as I got to 3 years, I cashed in and I quit my job because I wasn't happy. So it was a job that, again, people love doing it, but it just wasn't for me. It's speaking to a lot of customers that tend to be quite angry because, it's usually about money. They want to get their car renewal down in price, their home renewal, etc. And it was just that negativity for 8 hours a day was zapping me of energy. So I quit my job and I got a job as a butcher and a delivery driver, sort of 2-in-1.
Right.
And that was only ever going to be a temporary job. So while I was doing that job, it afforded me the time then in the afternoons. I'd finish about 3 o'clock. I'd have the whole afternoon and evening then to sort of look online and find an apprenticeship, not just find another job at that time. I didn't know about the apprenticeship. So I was looking, I didn't know what I wanted to go into, but I needed to find something. And the first thing that came up was a bus driver. And I love driving. I drive an hour in and an hour back, as we covered earlier. And I thought, that would be okay. So I applied for a job as a bus driver and went through the interview. They offered me the job. And I said, can I mull it over? So I was like, I'm going to mull it over because it's a big decision, because you have to commit to 3 years to be a bus driver, because they pay for all your training and to get your license. So it's like, if you leave after 3 years, you have to pay them back that money, and it's something like $3 or $4 grand. And I was like, it's a bit of a commitment for a job that I might not enjoy. So as I was thinking about it, I was applying for other jobs, just mulling it over. Like, I applied to be a driver for Tesco, I applied for so many other jobs, and I saw the BBC apprenticeship, and I spoke to my partner at the time, and I was like, I listen to podcasts every day. Like, my Spotify Unwrapped every year says that there's at least one day a year where I've listened to something for 24 hours straight, just because I have it on in the background when I'm doing it. I go to sleep and I'm listening to it. So I've always loved audio. The apprenticeship stood out because it was obviously in the BBC, and I used to listen to Chris Moyles do his McFly Day on a Friday on my drive to school and stuff. And then when working as a baker, I'd listen to Dev's Early Breakfast on Radio 1. So I've always had that radio in the background. I thought, this is my chance to sort of apply for something. If I don't go anywhere, then at least I threw my hat in the ring. But I'd be able to bring the radio from being in the background to the foreground.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I spoke to my partner at the time, and I was like, money wise, it's not as much as I'd be getting in a usual job, but it's an affordable wage. It's better than going to university. It's better than doing that, because you're obviously earning while you're learning.
Yes.
So I applied. I got the job interview, went through. It was like a video call. I was very nervous about that. But it went okay. I think, speaking about using nervous energy earlier, that's what I tend to do. And that's what I'm kind of doing now. As you can tell, that I'm rambling quite a bit.
You're not.
I did that in the interview, and it went well. And it was sort of just a waiting then. I think I waited about a month for them to get back to see if I'd been accepted or not. And in that time, I decided that the bus job wasn't for me. So I think it was early July. I declined. Yeah, it was like the first week of July. I declined the bus job,
Right.
And then on July the 16th, the day before my 30th birthday, where I was going to go on holiday to Venice and Rome and Milan, just as like a big birthday blowout,
Yeah.
I had a phone call from the BBC saying that I got the job,
Oh my
or
God.
the apprenticeship, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best 30th birthday present ever. So that's a very long-winded way of me saying how I sort of saw the job, how I went into it, and yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask you this, though, Sam. Is there any job that you've ever tried for that you haven't got? Because you've done well to do all those jobs.
Yeah, there's one that sticks out. It's being a store assistant in farm foods in Carmarthen.
Oh.
So I applied for it pretty soon after coming out of university. I thought, oh, it's stacking shelves, it's working at the till. It's something I can pick up. I've never done before. Applied for it and didn't even get an interview.
Oh my God.
I don't know why either. I was like, okay, because I lived in the area at that time as well, so it would have been really convenient for them. But yeah, I didn't get that. There's been loads of jobs that I haven't got.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, because you sustained, a lot of different jobs, which is great to hear, because the variety of life is great. And I've got to be honest, I think even though you might have been one of the oldest in your cohort when you were an apprentice, I think as a researcher on radio or TV, people's experiences of life is the best that they can offer that sort of job,
Yeah, absolutely. It's about gaining that perspective of different classes, different people. So, working in so many different industries, you meet so many different people. Like in the bakeries that I was with usually 60-plus-year-old men who were sort of, they'd always talk about smoking and, the football and the good old days. And we'd listen to sort of Swansea Sound or The Wave. And, you build that rapport with them, and they become not a father figure in any way, shape or form of it, but you sort of view at them as sort of a senior member of your life. And you sort of understand that perspective that they have, because they're going through different things at a later stage in life. And then working with younger people in call centers, etc., and talking to people on the phone, you get that more rounded view of life. Because I think until you step out of school and go into work, you get a very sort of very sheltered view of the world. I know that that's sort of opened up with social media and 24-hour news and stuff like that, but until you really meet people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, you can be quite sheltered in your outlook on life. And I think that gave me a good perspective then for getting into the apprenticeship, and it's fed into how I do my briefs. I don't think about what I want to get out of it. I think about what the wider communities want to get out of it, and asking questions from their point of view rather than just mine.
Yeah, I get you. So when you made the jump from sport over to Radio Wales, what were you working on at first? Where were you put at first?
So I was put on the afternoon show. So that's Monday to Thursday with Benazachta, and then Friday is Larry Sean. Yeah, and they're both brilliant. And honestly, if it wasn't for those two, and in particular Sarah Cooper, who was one of the researchers on the program at the time, I don't know where I would have been now, because they were so inviting, so welcoming, so warm, and they just really took me under their wing and showed me the way to do the job, because it was brand new to me. I didn't do it in sport. It was completely new. They sat me down, they sort of give me my brief to write, which I think was, I can't remember his name, it's the lead singer of Dexy's Midnight Runners.
Kevin Rowland.
Kevin Rowland. So he was my first brief to write on. I was like, God, I only know Come On Eileen, that's all, because they just play it in Swansea non-stop. So I sat down and I was told to write a certain amount of questions, try and write it in the sort of language of just a conversation. I wrote my first, I think it took me about a day and a half to write one brief, which is so long. You should only spend about 2 hours doing it. So to take almost 12 hours writing a brief, 12 working hours, that is, was long.
But
and it was, I had loads of feedback on it, and you learn from that sort of thing. You learn from getting that feedback and not being afraid to take constructive feedback, because you're not going to get it right the first time. It's very rare that you will anyway. I know some people will walk into a job and they'll blow the smoke out of the face. I don't know what I was trying to say there. They will.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Some people just take it like a duck to water.
That's it. That's the saying I was trying to think of. yeah.
That depends on your personality as well, though, I think. If you're somebody who really wants to get it right, we will probably take longer to do it, won't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to confidence. I'm not a very confident person, and at first, anyway. Once you get to know me, I can't shut up then, and I've become quite weird. But at first, I'm quite shy, quite timid. So I definitely needed that sort of arm around the shoulder approach from Sarah Benners and Aleri, and later, you know, the rest of the producers were brilliant. Like, there's a producer called Joe Bradley who's just fantastic. Like, he knows so much about radio. It's an unhealthy obsession, I think, of it. But he's a great teacher as well. And just remembering that it's an apprenticeship, you're not supposed to know everything right away. And even the people who work there now are still learning. Like, you can teach them stuff. You know, there's that, going back to that sort of talk about perspective. Like, if you haven't used a program like Dero, which is the sort of sound editing system that they use there, if you haven't used it, you start to play about with it and you find little shortcuts, little different ways of doing it, and then they watch you do it and like, oh, that's interesting, and you end up teaching them stuff. So
brilliant.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I know. I find radio a fascinating medium. I just I wished I'd done it the other way around, really, starting off in radio and then going to telly. But it was something that I did dip in and out of once you've got that basic knowledge of. It was Radio Man in my day, which Dera's overtaken, obviously.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of it was research and talking on the phone bashing with people, and I think, you know, as we talked about earlier, it is a lot about your maturity as a person in yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And getting people to do things for you, maybe, as you said, if they are a little bit shy or something. And sometimes that achievement is better than anything that happens all day sometimes, isn't it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's, you know, yeah, I think that you've said it perfectly. I don't know how to add to that.
And then, as you said as well, working with people that have been there for donkey's years, it's great that people are always willing to learn a new trick, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, you know, there's quite a few people in the BBC that have been there for 20 plus years, and you know, they've learned that way 20 years ago to do certain things, and and everyone does it. They get into that groove and they churn out content in that sort of formula, you know. They stick to that pattern because it works for them, and there's nothing wrong with doing that because it works most of the time. But I think to add that different perspective, that other way of doing things, other way of thinking, is only healthy, because it's going to invite new listeners into the sort of program, into the shows that they make, because it's, you know, it sounds a bit different, sounds a bit quirky. So yeah, that's what I've hoped I've been able to add in my time there, and hopefully I'll continue to do it.
So during your apprenticeship then, Sam, you sort of moved around on from the afternoon show. I know you did a bit in the mornings as well, didn't you, on the more newsy type programs as well?
Yeah, so that was when the phone-in was in a different time slot. So the phone-in used to be where Wyn Evans is now at. I think it was 9 till maybe it was 8 till 10. I can't remember what time it was, but it was the earlier show. Yeah, it was quite newsy, and I'll be honest, it's not something that I want to do forever, because I'm not a news person. You know, like I mentioned, I love my comedy. I love the silliness in stuff. I love people like, you know, Greg James is just fantastic at doing silly stuff on the radio and having that quirky side of it, whereas news can be a bit doom and gloom sometimes. So so yeah, I started starting afternoons, did a bit on the phone in. I've done a very little bit on Wins, actually, but I've moved across all three, and it's brilliant. You know, there's such a variety there, and it is one big team. I know that sounds really cheesy. I was going to say one big family, but I thought I'll stick to one big team. That's less cheesy. But we really do sort of speak to each other, work collaboratively, and that's the great thing about radio, is that you can bounce ideas off each other. You can sort of check the themes of what you're going to be doing as it goes into the next show, and it's all about getting that editorial sort of mindset as well with certain things. So it's definitely helped to work on the phone in and on more newsy stuff. But yeah, my sort of goal is to go into more silly stuff.
So yeah, no, I know what you mean. What about things like outside broadcasts? Have you had a chance to do much of that? during your apprenticeship and after? Have you done any sort of outdoor stuff?
So I did one with BBC Sport actually before I moved, and it was doing the Six Nations. I didn't go very far, I literally went across the road, but I went to the Principality Stadium, and it was Wales v England, and I was just there as a sort of a shadow capacity, but it was really exciting to see. And you'd sit in the sort of the media bit of the stadium, and you'd look to your left and like Matt Dawson was next to me, and all of the 5 Live pundits, and then it was just crazy to see those sort of names and faces from the sporting world just sat in front of me or next to me. It was crazy. So I think that's the only OB that I did. So
sometimes people don't think of radio being, they just think of it being within a studio and what they hear coming out. But sometimes people forget that radio do venture out sometimes, and they cover live events, obviously with sport and stuff, I know. But
well, recently with Radio Wales, I didn't work on it, but we did the Elvis Presley Festival in Porthcawl. So it's like our yearly event that Owen Money goes to, and it's brilliant. They go down there, they get a lot of vox pops from the people who are in attendance, they get a lot of content for social media, and they do the program from there, and it just adds a different sort of dynamic to the way that the show sounds. Having the audience react to whatever Owen's going to say next is brilliant. There's definitely sort of events that they do OBs with, but I've very much, I don't know how, but I've somehow avoided them. And they do things like they do the Royal Welsh as well every year. But maybe next year I'll get stuck into some OBs, because I'd love to go.
Yeah, I think when you do go, it can be a bit chaotic.
Yeah, I bet.
You've lost, you've lined somebody up to talk about something, and then they've disappeared. They've gone to the loo or something, and you've got no, like in the studio, you've got that control, haven't you?
Yeah, you know where they're going to go because they can't get out of the building without your pass.
Yeah. It's that type of thing. Like OBs, it can be very sort of like, oh my God, she's just disappeared, or if you're doing it in like an Eisteddfod or something, and it's a gig and people are drinking.
Yeah,
and
you know what they're going to say.
Yes. So it can become a bit chaotic. So there is something about the studio that it's nice and controlled,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the parts of the job that I love doing. Is when I was a researcher on afternoons, they get a lot of guests in for features like the Advice Hour, or they get a lot of celeb guests in. Most of the celebs are over Zoom because it's just more convenient for them. But just going down to meet them at reception and bringing them up, making sure that they're comfortable, getting teas and coffee, show them where the bathrooms are, etc. I love that side of it, because you're trying to make an impression of the BBC. Like their first impression is you know, second impression. So they come through security, they go through reception, etc., and then they're waiting for someone to come down and represent the BBC. And it's you, and you sort of meet them with a big smile. You sort of talk to them as you go up the stairs or the lift if you're lazy like me, and then you sort of sit them down and just chat to them. And I should probably chat to them less than I do, but there's certain contributors that we get on constantly, like Liz Zorab, who's our sort of gardening expert. We chat nonsense for about 45 minutes. She comes in early just to chat to me now, and I end up having to sort of stay a bit later because I'm not actually doing work when I do that. But yeah, I love that side of it.
It's funny, so it's saying there about contributors or guests or whatever, when you start working with people that are remotely famous, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because you realise that when you book somebody quite famous, you go and pick them up from reception, you're chatting away to them, they're just like you and me, they're just normal people. And that's one thing. The nice thing I did find is when I used to book a lot of bands in my early time, and I remember booking the Stereophonics, and I was a massive fan. But I just had to deal with telling Kelly Jones where the toilet was and what time lunch was. And you wanted to say, "Oh, I love where it gets around." But you just can't go there, can you?
No, you kind of have to take the fame out of it and just talk to them as if they're just another person, which they are at the end of the day.
Exactly. And then nowadays, I find with now new apprentices, you sort of say, don't go and ask so and so for a selfie, because it just doesn't look professional. You are in the same capacity as them,
Yeah.
But I think it's worse now because for people, not just for youngsters, but everyone's got a phone. Everyone wants a selfie or a picture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like so I don't know if you watched Traitors. I didn't really watch it, but I think it was Andrew.
Right, I didn't. But there was a Welsh guy on at this series.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so Andrew came in. I think his name was Andrew anyway. He came in to the studio to do an interview with Benaz, and I haven't seen so many people flock from every floor of the building to try and get a selfie with him. Yeah, so I was his sort of meet and greeter. So I went down to reception, met him, and even before I got him through the doors into like the BBC bit of the building, people were asking for selfies in the foyer with him, and he was lovely about it. He was, fame was very new to him then because he'd just come off the show, but people were going crazy for it, and I had to sort of take him upstairs and almost try and hide him because I think we did about 40 selfies that day, and I felt so bad. But honestly, he was loving life. But yeah, I think there's a lot of celebrities that wouldn't want that, and they'd respect their sort of privacy a bit. So you've got to gauge it. If you do the apprenticeship, you find that you're in that sort of situation, just use your common sense, I guess, isn't it? And not uber fan them, but if you chat to them first, if they're a person, then you can slip in the odd comment about oh, I loved you doing this, that, and that. And then maybe approach for a picture.
Yeah, exactly. There's ways and means, aren't there?
Yeah, you got to be professional. That's the main thing about it. And then showing your human side of it is probably quite nice to them. But you've definitely got to gauge it because there's probably some divas out there that wouldn't want to be asked for a selfie.
No, exactly. So, I'm just thinking about your future now. I mean, you've got a staff job at the BBC as a researcher. You get to act up as producer.
Yeah,
you're moving. Life is looking good, Sam.
Yeah, it's looking brilliant. Like if I think back to where I was even 3 years ago, I never thought I'd be in this situation. So the apprenticeship, it's going to sound super cheesy, but I'm going to say it has changed my life. It's really sort of opened doors for me. The apprenticeship is getting your foot in the door, and then you've got to make of it what you will, and you've got to really sort of show you're willing, show that you want to be there. You want to show that your presence and almost be unremovable. You want them to sort of feel as if they got rid of you, they wouldn't be able to cope. And I hope that's what I've achieved. And things are looking brilliant. Like, to think that I've got a staff job is just insane.
Oh my God, I know. I mean, that is just, the word staff is just non-applicable to so many people's works these days. Do you know what I mean? So, we're hugely proud of you and huge congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And I'm not just saying it to sort of sweet talk you, but all of you at Skill Cymru wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you so much.
It couldn't have been easy for you, Sam, coming into our environment, sort of where we do the diploma work and stuff, because you'd left that a long time ago,
Yeah.
So obviously coming to do your diploma work, it's like, can feel a bit like a school classroom environment, can't it? But
and a lot of the cohort were quite, they were in their early 20s or even in their teens. So it definitely felt like I was an uncle turning up to a family reunion. So it was a bit weird at first, and I had to sort of put my brain into gear for sort of education, because that's what that side of it is. You're learning how to sort of navigate the world of media and stuff, and it was a lot to get my head around. But after a couple of weeks, it just became natural, because you're always there to support us. Any questions that I had, I'd just approach you, and you'd be able to sort of explain it in a different way for me. And that's sort of one of the biggest tips is, if you do the apprenticeship, just if you're struggling with something, don't sit in silence, speak up. Because not only with learning stuff at Skill, I've talked about it already, but the issues I had at sports, I spoke up and moved and it was better. So if you're going to suffer in silence, you'll get nowhere. But if you speak up, doors will open and chances will come your way. So definitely make it yours. Don't just sort of fall into the routine and think, oh, this is the path I have to take.
Yeah.
You can forge your own,
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks for that, Sam. So I know I've caught you before you're off to work now, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'll be heading to Cardiff in the next sort of hour or so to produce Friday Night with H, but with Katie Owen tonight.
Oh, wicked!
Yeah, so it's good. It's lots of music. It's just a fun, energetic show. So it's from 10 till midnight every Friday, and then the party playlist goes out from midnight till 1 a.m. But that's sort of recorded a week before, edited, and then it's just put out as a sort of a tape.
Okay, so do you have to hang around for that hour? Do you mind me asking that?
No, I don't mind at all. No, I don't have to. So it's on the auto recorder or the auto player. So once midnight comes, it sort of takes over the studio and it plays it out, and I can just close my studio down and head home. So I get home about 1:30.
Okay.
So yeah.
And when's the big move to Cardiff? In a few weeks' time?
Yeah, around the 27th, 26th. So it's nothing in cement sort of with a date wise, but by the end of the month, by Halloween, I'll be in Cardiff. So look out.
Watch out, Cardiff.
Treating, yeah.
Because, sometimes a new job comes with a move, but in a way, at least you've sort of smoothed it out a bit because you know where you're working, you know the people, you know the job inside out.
Yeah.
So it's just getting used to the new surroundings, and you'll be living with somebody you know as well. Crazy Dan.
Yeah, lovely crazy disco Dan. Yeah, it would be great to live with him. He's a good lad, and I think he'll go far. But yeah, it's nice that like you said, I've got that base level of I've got security with the job. I've got time now with those 6 months of where I'll be living to find somewhere more permanent. And yeah, sort of just forging, not a new life, but forging my next sort of chapter
definitely
in Cardiff. So yeah, it'll be sad to leave Swansea, but it's only an hour away.
Yes.
So I'll be visiting loads, but it'd be exciting to sort of be in the buzz of a big city, because when I went to university, it was Aberystwyth, so a town.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Swansea, I know, is a city, but I've always kept away from the city centre. So it'd be exciting to be, in the middle of it all.
Okay, well, listen, thank you for giving up your time to speak to me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been lovely to talk to you.
It's just nice to catch up as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been lush.